Hey there, this is Molly with the Clean Food Dirty Girl podcast, and today I have someone who I bet you all know of. So, the Clean Food Dirty Girl community, Dirties as they're called, I know that they love the Exam Room podcast because I see them talking about it all the time, and they're going to be stoked to know that I have the one, the only Chuck Carroll on the show this morning. Well, my morning, you're not morning since you're on the East Coast, since we were just talking about that. But Chuck, welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you. I talked with you a few weeks ago for the Exam Room podcast, which I was honored to do, and we had such a great conversation. We wanted to keep it going. So here we are.
Yeah, I'm stoked to be here. So we've got the Dirties and now the Roomies, and everybody's getting together. We're having like a Dirty Room podcast. This is awesome.
That would be awesome to do some kind of like graph and like an overlay to see how many examies, right?
Exam Roomies.
Exam roomies.
Yeah.
Examies is kind of sounds
I don't
medical,
know.
but
That's a
exam
yeah.
roomies and dirties are the same because my guess is it would be a lot.
Yeah. What is that? A Venn diagram? Is that where they
There you
overlap? You
go.
got the circles? Yeah. All right.
Yes,
That was the one
yes.
class I showed up for.
So, Chuck, I'm excited to talk with you. I had a great talk with you on the Exam Room podcast. I mean, we talked about me mainly, but now the tables are turned, and I want to talk about you because you have not only do you have a very interesting story, but you also have a very interesting job. So, I want to get into all of this, but first, can you tell a little bit for people who don't know a little bit about your story and what led you to plants?
Oh man. So a little bit about a really big story. At my heaviest, Molly, I was 420 pounds. I was a much different individual inside and out, and woefully addicted to fast food. Like had to have it every day, multiple times a day. And Taco Bell in particular was my muse. I could mix up the other stops, but there was just something about Taco Bell that called to me in the night, literally, where I would have to go and answer those cravings. And if I didn't get it, I was a completely different person. And carrying around all that weight, it takes like a physical toll on a person and an emotional toll on that person. And I was kind of living my dream being on the radio, but I was having to play this guy that I really wasn't. Like I tried to convince myself that I was this pseudo shock jock, larger than life, Chris Farley meets Howard Stern type of character. And when you think that that's what you need to be, or anybody feels like they need to be somebody who they're not in order for others to accept them, like that's a heavy burden to carry. And always settling for less than I kind of deserved, didn't have a good sense of self-worth. And then on the physical end of things, it's like I'm in my early 20s and I'm already having these incredibly sharp and terrifying chest pains, with heart disease having run through my family. Like my dad's dad, my grandpa, I never got the chance to meet him because he died of a heart attack before I was even born. It had a number of them before one finally claimed his life. And then on my mom's side, my grandfather there had a number of heart attacks, wound up having quadruple bypass surgery. At that point, my own dad also was having heart troubles, and I was just outpacing all of them. Like I was playing catch up. And so here I am, like 22, 23, already having massive chest pains. And I was just desperate to find answers. And, I thought that like I was going to die before I hit 30, which is a really sad thing to think of, and just like somebody who's struggling with drugs and alcohol, like it was an addiction and I didn't know how to stop. And so I made the radical decision to have weight loss surgery, lost a lot of weight. Long story made short, the surgeon told me to eat a hamburger, but I knew that I was addicted to food. Like people get hooked on booze and drugs. And I was like, if I eat this hamburger, I'm going to go right back to, where I started from. And having seen a lot of other people who have had similar outcomes after having weight loss surgery, I didn't want that for myself. So I never ate the hamburger, but luckily, um, when I was doing an interview, I was a former sports reporter, and I was doing an interview with an athlete who was from Wisconsin, of all places, the sausage and cheese capital of the U.S. And he was promoting his book that he had just released about his plant powered journey to the top of his profession. And he's like, hey, man, I know that you lost a lot of weight. You should really watch these documentaries, and gave me a couple of authors to check out. And I did. And that was when the light bulb kind of flipped for me. And suddenly, this weight loss journey that I had been on became a total health journey. And so the
Mm.
weight that I had started to regain a little bit after the weight loss surgery came pouring back off. I got all the way down to 140 pounds and have been healthier and happier than I have ever been in my entire life. These past 8 or 9 years have just been tremendous now.
Wow, that's quite a journey you have been on. I mean, that's incredible because I talk to a lot of people on the podcast, and I see a lot of people who have lost weight. The amount of weight that you took off and kept off, that is significant. I mean, that's really life or death
Yeah,
type of weight.
huge,
Yeah.
huge. I'm literally one third the man that I used to be.
Yeah.
Which, being only 5 feet 5 inches tall, I get asked a lot, how did you weigh 420 pounds? And it's like, I was an addict, and when I go and I
Yeah.
give talks and I explain, just how powerful food can be on the mind, people are like, oh my God, I had no idea. And then I'm like, yeah, so ask me how I feel about cheat days. And suddenly it's like they get the epiphany too. And it's like, oh, we're kind of
Yeah.
going through life with blinders on here.
Right. That's a really good point. I mean, I can relate to the addict side of this because I was very addicted to alcohol. And so I have one of those brains that, has a tendency, is prone to that. And my drug was booze, but it's anytime I hear people talking about addiction, and I was watching one of your podcast episodes last night, and you were like, addiction is addiction is addiction is addiction, and it's so true. I mean, I can so relate to people struggle with food or with cocaine or with whatever just through my own experience. So, can you talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, would you mind talking a little bit about how, like, what that addiction looked like for you? How did that feel like? What was a typical day for you? Like, I just kind of want to get in your head when you were really, before the weight loss surgery, before you found your way with your food. What was that like for you?
For sure. And so let's kind of frame this from the position of, drug addiction, where a lot of people, even if they weren't a drug addict themselves, they've no doubt seen documentaries, TV shows, watched somebody struggle with this. And so when I go and I give live talks, I actually take brain scans that were part of this National Institute of Health study.
Mm.
And they show dopamine release centers in the brain, the pleasure centers of two different individuals. And the only difference between them, and these things were lit up like Christmas trees, like super bright, like getting a massive reaction. One person was using cocaine, and the other person who was overweight was eating a donut. And I mean, I'm telling you, the brain reacts identically. And so when you get that kind of a rush, like people know that cocaine is a very hard habit to kick, right? But if the brain is reacting identically when it comes to your indulgences in your diet, then no wonder it's so hard to keep weight off long term. Because what do? We set ourselves up for failure by saying, well, I'm going to lose these 10 to 20 pounds, and then I'm going to have that slice of pizza, that
Mhm.
slice of chocolate cake, whatever the case may be, whatever your jam is. And so when you reintroduce that kind of evil back into your system, I don't, I hate to call it evil, but that's kind of what it is. When you reintroduce that stuff into your system, then of course you're going to want it again and again and again and again. So you relapse
Mhm.
just like you would with a substance of abuse, a classic one. But for me, the big awakening was I was working in radio, as I said, and I was working, and this is, I just, the irony on this just jumps off the page. The radio station was WBIG here in the Washington, D.C. area, big 100.3. And so here I am, this big guy, this larger than life character. And the sales guy comes to me and he's like, Chuck, we've got this new client. We would love for you to endorse them. And it happened to be the cookie diet. And the cookie diet is you eat one of these cookies that tasted just god awful. I mean, just horrible, sponge on your kitchen sink. You eat one for breakfast, you drink a lot of water with it. That's supposed to keep you full until lunch. And at lunch, you eat another cookie, you drink more water, and that's supposed to keep you
Ooh.
full until dinner. And at dinner, they never really defined what a sensible dinner was. They just told you to eat it and make sure that there's some vegetables on your plate. Cool, I got you. You're going to pay me to do this. I'm going to give you everything I've got, Captain. Well, what I wasn't counting on was just like, again, let's call back to the drug addiction, just like somebody who was trying to break an alcohol or narcotic addiction, I went through a withdrawal from crappy food. So, day one, I'm pretty motivated and I'm feeling gung ho, like excited, but maybe not feeling quite right. Day two, the cravings start to kick in and I get more cranky. And then I also feel like I'm getting kind of sick, like I'm coming down with something, the
Mm.
sniffles, feeling a little bit flush. Day three, it was like I had the full blown flu and I went from being cranky to just straight up angry. Like nobody dare approach me to say anything, even if you're trying just to say good morning and have a great day. Like I would want no part of that. And the cravings only intensified throughout the day. So after I leave work that day, I go right home, I get into bed, I pull the covers up, and I'm like, I'm getting the sweats a little bit. I'm shaking. I'm really feeling like, man, I got to call the doctor. Like, this is not good. But simultaneously, all I could think about was Taco Bell. Like, I need my fix, my daily fix. I had a standing order at the Taco Bell. They knew me. They would just see my car pull into the parking lot before I even got to the order board. They were like,
Mm.
"Hey Chuck, do you want your usual 20 bucks? Please drive through." And 72 hours without this, I'm freaking out. I'm so angry to the point where I pop out of bed and I boom, I punch my fist through a wall because
Oof.
all I wanted in the world was Taco Bell. I'm so enraged because I haven't had fast food in just 3 days that I'm punching my fist through a wall and then a door. And I didn't know what to do other than sneak out in the middle of the night, go to the 24-hour drive through, hide all the evidence before everybody got up in the morning and so I could like keep my dirty little secret. Well, the strangest thing happened when I did that. I go, I place my order. I'm not feeling great about it. Like I know something's not right. But as soon as I got home and I took that first bite, Molly, I'm telling you, it was like the greatest antidepressant and antibiotic rolled into one. Suddenly, I went from feeling like crap to feeling like I was on cloud nine. But then that was quickly replaced by just like sorrow and
Mm.
sadness and this hopeless feeling because it dawned on me in that moment that I was hooked on this just like a lot of people I knew who were struggling with those classic substances of abuse. Alcoholism runs in my family, drug use and in talking to people who have experienced true withdrawals from the classical substances like that, I was experiencing something very similar during relapse, and I didn't know what I was going to do because you can
Mm.
certainly live without cocaine, but you can't live without food. And so, how was I going to change? Nobody ever told me what it meant to eat a healthy diet. So, all I did for the time being was go to the gym for 2.5 hours a day, burn off all of those Taco Bell calories, which is relatively easy to do when you weigh that much. You burn a lot of
Mm.
calories in a short amount of time, and I would go on the air and I would lie and like attribute all of my weight loss success to the cookie diet, but nothing could be further from the truth. Like
Mm.
fast food had its hooks in me in the worst way. And that is for me like what addiction is really all about.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. Um, I think that people need to hear that.
Yeah.
People really need to hear that.
It's
Yeah,
like you hide it, right? Just like it's
yeah,
anything else that you would be abusing. You hide the length that you go to consume 10,000 calories a day.
yeah,
You dare not let anybody know.
yeah.
Else they organize an intervention for you, which my
Right.
friends tried to do.
Your friends tried to do an intervention with you for on with food about
They
food.
did. They
Really?
did because as
Mm.
soon as the cookie diet endorsement ended,
Yeah.
I stopped going to the gym. Naturally, all the weight came
Mm.
pouring back on. I got heavier than I had ever been in my entire life. They grew so concerned, they tried to organize, and I say tried to
Mm.
organize an intervention for me. And somebody tipped me off inadvertently, and I was so embarrassed and just
Mm.
angry about it. Like, I called up the person who was trying to organize it, and I just read this poor guy the riot act, and I feel so bad about that to this day. Like, who was he to tell me that I had a problem? I knew that I had a problem, but I literally cut him and a lot of other people who were going to be at that intervention out of my life for a number of years
Mm.
because I wasn't ready to break up with fast food. I chose fast food over friendship. As disgusting as that sounds, that was the decision that I made. And
Yeah.
luckily, they're good friends. They're back in my life now. But, John Ballard, if anybody is from the Washington, D.C. area, who was on DC 101 for many, many years. And then later, we did the morning show at Big 100.3 together, man. I'm so sorry that that conversation happened, bro. You always have my best intention at heart.
Yeah. Well, it's like, the adage goes, it's like the drug, whatever it is, ends up, controlling you. And, that's a classic case. I mean, you weren't, that when you have that hook in you, whatever it is, like there is this feeling of that substance, whatever it is calling the shots. And that is a really hard place to be because it feels so disempowering and it can feel so hopeless. So I'm curious, you're in this spot. So you decide to have weight loss surgery. So what was it that got you to sign up for that surgery?
So I don't think that it was ever like one thing. I think it's, like death by a thousand cuts, and eventually
Mm.
you just bleed out and you reach this point where you got to make some changes. And so the girl who I was dating, and this is what I considered to be my first real relationship, was just a god awful one. Like, we were coworkers, but she refused to acknowledge that we were dating, even to her friends and family, asked me not to say anything to my friends and family. And all I could
Mm.
think was that she was ashamed to be with somebody who was my size. And then being so embarrassed when I couldn't fit in an airline seat. It's like I tried, really hard to bargain with God leading up to that flight. I hadn't flown in many years and I had to do one across country for work. And I got there and I was like praying and like did not come close to fitting. And everybody I felt like on the plane was just looking at me and judging me and praying themselves that I wasn't sitting next to them and having to get the seatbelt extender so that we could take off. I mean, it was just mortifying. And then the constant chest pain that I was experiencing because I, no doubt had like majorly clogged arteries and was doing nothing to change that because I was still eating 10,000 calories a day. It was all of that and a drive to live to see 30 pushed me to the point where I was like, enough is enough. I'll get the surgery. I'll probably put all the weight back on. And then, at least when I die at 40 at this point, I will be able to say that I went to my grave having tried everything. And
Mm.
that was my mindset going into the surgery that day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there are different types of weight loss surgeries. Can I ask which one you had?
Yeah, I had the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, one of the OGs of weight loss surgery.
Okay. So can you explain like how that works?
Yeah.
So that like, okay, so is that when your stomach then is smaller?
It is. So initially, the stomach does get smaller, and it's really because they staple off your stomach. So let
Yeah.
if this is your full stomach, then they staple off a portion that's about the size of your thumb here,
Okay.
right? And then all of this, they never take it out. It's just sitting there. It's just stapled off. And then they reroute a portion of your intestine to meet your new stomach. And then that's kind of how that magic is made. And because you're rerouting a portion of the intestines uh, and eating less, you're going to lose weight because you can't absorb fat and calories the same. The thing is, when you go in for these consultations, at least in my case, they made mention to me and everybody else who was considering having the surgery that if this particular procedure did not work and you regain the weight, don't worry, they can go back and staple your stomach a second time, which is like, no, thank you. When you're talking to addicts and you tell them that, what you're saying is
Mm.
that you're not at the end of the road yet. You can continue down this unhealthy path, and then we'll save you a second time when you truly do reach that end of the road. So don't worry if you slip up. So that's the surgery in a nutshell. And I knew, because when I woke up, like, I was not feeling great. I felt like I was hit by a truck after the surgery.
Mhm.
So when I woke up that day, I kind of made up my mind, like, I'm never eating fast food again.
Mm.
It will force me to go through that detox. You don't have a choice, because you get 3 to 6 months where you physically can't tolerate that kind of rich, fatty food any longer, or else you'll get super, super, super sick, wind up back in the hospital. Didn't want that. So I go through the detox, which is why I was stunned when, like, a year and a half later, as I had bottomed out and the scale kind of began to climb back up, is like the doctor, the surgeon, looked me in the eye, and I'm expressing a little bit of concern to him about, gradually the scale moving in the wrong direction again. He's like, "Don't worry about it, man. You need to eat a hamburger. You need to eat a hamburger." So he didn't say, like, "If you want to, go ahead. It won't hurt you." No, he, like, might as well have busted out his prescription pad and written a prescription for a quarter pounder. Like, he said, "You need to eat a hamburger." But had I not had that epiphany years earlier, in the middle of the night, that I was a food addict, I very well would have eaten that hamburger and gotten right back into the same position that I was before. But that was the time when I decided, like, hey, I got to stop listening to everybody else. Need to start listening to myself in terms of my health. And I never did. I've never had a bite of fast food now in over 15 years.
Mm. Okay, so after the weight loss surgery, um, is it like a kind of continual weight loss, but just at a faster rate because you're just eating much less food? Like, how long did it like how much weight did you lose before you started then gaining weight again?
So yeah, it's pretty quick in the beginning. Come to find out, I think you're losing a lot of weight just from inflammation that you've been carrying around for so long. So, like, the first couple of weeks, I was losing like 25 pounds a week. Like, it was like massive weight loss.
Mm.
And then it gradually tapered off. So by the time I got to like 18 months, I was down around 160 or so. And then when I got to 160, it started to climb in the other direction. And I started to tell myself, well, don't worry, like, if you get back over 200, that's still way better than you were before. 250, no problem. You're still way lighter than most people in the family. And I recognized those mind tricks right away. I think that it's so important that we listen to our own intuition and not forget our past experiences. And so I always remembered, like, that night that I had that epiphany, and I called back to it. I was like, all right, well, what are the ramifications if I continue down this path? And I knew exactly where I would wind up, and it was someplace that I did not want to be.
Mhm.
So as you graduate from, I'll take the viewers, the dirties, inside the surgery a little bit more. So, like, the first couple of weeks, you really can't eat anything, and they want you to just drink fluids and try to get, protein in via powder or supplements. Week 3-ish, you start to introduce pureed type foods. So anything that could go in a blender and be really soft, or baby food even, would be okay. Week 3 becomes like soft foods, and that would be things like grits or mashed potatoes. Tuna fish was another big one that they were really all about. And they were hammering protein home like nobody's business. It was like the menu that they give you is nothing but like ground chicken, ground turkey, you know, deli meats, slices of American cheese, like all the unhealthy types of proteins. And no real mention of vegetables on there. And but again, nobody had taught me how to eat healthy. So I assumed that this, coming from the office, would be a healthy choice. Meatloaf was on there too. And then anyway, so then a few more weeks after the pureed foods, then you can get into the soft, and then eventually you're back eating a regular diet. And then you kind of figure out how big of a portion you can tolerate. And over time, your stomach is, it's a balloon. So think about, like, you know, you blow up the balloon and it gets big, right? And then when you take all the air out of it again, it never gets back to the same size that it was. So every time you would eat, your stomach would stretch out a little bit more and come back, and then stretch out a little bit more and come back, and a little bit more and come back. So eventually, your stomach becomes pretty close to normal size over time. And anybody that's ever sat down with me presently to see me, take down my kitchen sink salad at the end of the day knows, man, like we're not having a regular salad bowl. Like we got a big ass mixing bowl of salad that we're about to like take down. So that's also
Yeah.
kind of a misnomer. You get the small stomach in the beginning, but over time you can stretch that thing right back
Oh,
out.
okay. We call those salads big ass salads in our community, and they're the
Cheers.
best.
Uh-huh.
So, okay, so that makes sense then. So that's why. So a lot of people who have weight loss surgery, I think you said it on one of your podcasts, like and you just said it a little bit here. You thought that it was going to be like another diet, and
Mhm.
then eventually you would go back, and that's what happens for a lot of people. Not everyone, obviously, but for a lot of people, they will go back because you can, right? And so I think a lot of people think, oh, weight loss surgery, done deal, but it's not necessarily like that because your stomach can get back to the size that it was before when you went into the surgery. You were talking, I was just thinking, so that means that you went through another detox then after the surgery then from fast food, right? Because you were eating fast food up until that point.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, right up until pretty much like what was it, 36 hours before they tell you not to eat anything. And yeah, I even remember my last supper. It was not Taco Bell. It was 18 inches of a Philly cheesesteak and a big, big bucket of fries. And yeah, man, that was my last supper.
Mm. Okay, and so then you went through the withdrawal. I mean, but I imagine you were already like your body was feeling so bad from the surgery. Maybe it was just
Yeah.
all. That's why you said you were feeling like a truck. I mean, for many reasons, everything just kind of hit you.
Yeah, it was this one was not done laparoscopically, and I actually have a pretty large scar on my
Mm.
stomach from where they opened me. So it kind of looks like I was in a knife fight, which makes me look tough. Um, and so, yeah, I was feeling bad from that. And obviously, when you have all of that inflammation and toxic buildup that's just been in your system for so long, like, and it's got to go out. Like your body's finally getting a chance to process it because your digestive system, your metabolism's having a chance to process it for like the first time, as opposed to just piling more and more and more
Mhm.
stuff on. So you're going to feel a little bit sick too. Um, but you know, after those first couple of weeks, like honestly, I was feeling pretty daggone good. It was amazing to me how quickly the body rebounded, and probably just because like I literally hit the reset button. Yeah, I was carrying around a lot of weight, but I certainly wasn't eating
Mhm.
garbage like I used to, and that kind of set me on the healthier path pretty quickly.
Yeah. Okay, so at what point did you find then plant-based eating and get hooked up with Dr. Barnard and all of this, and what did that change for you?
Well, would you believe that it was still years later? Like it was like good 5 years later, where I was doing a sports talk radio show with an NFL player here in Washington with the Commanders, and neither one of us were vegan, vegetarian, anything close to it. But we get a call from our agent, who was contacted by somebody at the Physicians Committee who wanted to. Have sports media personalities and professional athletes do this campaign called Teaming Up for Health. And I knew nothing about the V word being vegan. And certainly, Adam, my co host, knew nothing about that either. But we wanted to help people feel better about themselves. I've got this pretty cool weight loss story, and it was a really good experience. That was the first time that anybody ever taught me, like, truly how important fruits and vegetables were in your body. And I've really enjoyed that. And so I kind of tucked these guys away in the back of my mind. I was like, I want to circle back. I want to work with these guys someday. Like they were really cool. And then another couple of years go by. That show ends, and I'm interviewing a professional wrestler by the name of Austin Aries. He's the one that grew up in Wisconsin with the sausage and all the cheddar
Cheese.
cheese. And
Hmm.
he's the one, who wrote his own book and then gave me others to read and said, watch these documentaries. And I did, and I thought back to my experience with PCRM, and I was like, this makes all the sense in the world. because it's not just a weight loss journey anymore. Like, let's go ahead and make this a heart disease journey and a cancer journey and an Alzheimer's journey, all of which run in my family. And if I'm able to reduce my risks substantially for all of those and keep the weight off, like, why wouldn't I want to do this? And so ever since then, so now it's been like 8 years, something like that, that I've been exclusively eating a plant-based diet. And we're in season 7 of the show. I recognized the power of it very quickly and wanted to help enlighten and inspire and educate other people. So we've been rocking and rolling ever since.
Yeah. Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, 6 years, right? You've been doing this now?
We're in the middle of season 7, so I'd say, yeah, about seven, seven
7 years,
years.
yeah.
Yeah.
So then so your eating changed as you're learning about all of this. You're like, okay, there's something to it. So you're learning how to cook and to eat this way. Was that I mean, you weren't eating fast food anymore, right? But you were eating like healthier than you were, but not as healthy as you could be. So how was that transition for you?
It wasn't bad. My biggest vice at that point was dairy. Like, I was
Hmm.
drinking, gosh, probably a gallon of organic skim milk every day, thinking that that was a healthy thing, and then wondering why I was constipated all the time. So I
Hmm.
learned about that while doing the show too. Um, and it really wasn't hard for me, and both my wife and I thought that it was going to be way more difficult than it turned out to be. And I remember, like, when I told her I was going to go vegan, she's like, "What, you're already the healthiest eater I know, this and that, all you do is eat organic food, you don't go to fast food places anymore, blah 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 blah." And I was like, push pause on this conversation. Tell you what, give me 90 minutes, let's watch What the Health together, and then let me know what you think. And as the credits are rolling, God bless her, she turns right to me and she's like, "We're going vegan." I said, "Yes, we are." And it wasn't bad, because a lot of meat substitutes were already coming online at that point, and we were able to use those to kind of transition over. And as I learned more and gravitated more toward the whole food plant based side of things, wasn't that difficult either. And I'm
Mhm.
not even a great cook. I don't even like to cook. So I guess that's my dirty little secret now. Everybody thinks that I love to cook. I'm just I'd rather watch a football game or talk about health and eat a delicious meal. But it's still super 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 easy to do. You can do it on a budget, and it's the best thing I've ever done. Honest to goodness.
Wow. So what do you think would have changed if you would have learned about this way of eating before you got the weight loss surgery?
Mm, hypothetical. That is actually something that I've wondered about quite a bit. Um, I don't know. I know that my addiction was so bad that whatever intervention I would have had, it would have had to have been a pretty momentous one, in that the radical decision to have weight loss surgery, I mean, that qualifies as momentous, it qualifies as radical. I think that had I were to go exclusively plant-based overnight, and here's the caveat, maintained long-term success, I would have had to have gone to a facility like a True North and
Mhm.
done that full-blown detox, just like the weight loss surgery forced me to do, gotten that education all the while, and then given it a go. Because I think
Yeah.
that while I could have done it initially without having gone through that full-blown detox and having an educational and community support arm of things, long term, I may not have been as successful. So that's why I'm a big proponent of, if somebody's really struggling with their weight and reaches, a pretty big number on that scale, like I was up to, like, you absolutely can do it without surgical interventions or medications or anything like that. But you're still going to need, support from,
Mhm.
outside of just your own, gumption. You're still going to
Mhm.
need a lot of people to help you, to keep you on the straight and narrow, because there are going to be days when you are going to want to pull your hair out as you're going through that detox. And without the proper education, or having a late night epiphany like I did with Taco Bell, if a doctor tells you that you need to eat a hamburger, you're probably going to eat a hamburger. And that's going to set you down a road that will end in heartache, heartbreak, or even, God forbid, but death. And those are things that you don't want. So, I would have needed support.
Yeah.
I didn't have it at the time. I would love to go back and say, well, what if I did things differently? Or if I knew then what I know now, I probably would have opted for that route.
Mm-hmm.
But make no mistake about it, I don't regret my decision either.
Yeah,
I
well,
don't
because
regret my
you
decision.
can't, because you didn't know, right?
Exactly.
You didn't know, and that's why hypothetical questions suck. And I'm sorry I asked it.
No, 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 no. It's
I'm
kind of
kidding.
fun. It's kind of
Yeah, I
fun
mean,
because it ponders, man. And it's like I want to reach the people who are in the position that I once was.
yeah,
Those are the people who I talk to whenever I do the exam room. I feel like I'm talking to the old me. And what is something that he would be curious about? How can I help him along? And so I hope that, there are other people who are in those shoes who are like, oh my gosh, like I should go down this road. Maybe I should call up, Dr. Alan Goldhammer at True North. Or maybe I should go see,
hmm,
the Barnard Medical Center, and maybe they can help coach me up. And I really do. I hope that they're able to do that. I've seen a
yeah,
lot of people who go plant based overnight, lose a lot of weight, but then you never hear from them again after a couple of years because they start going in the wrong direction. And we're talking about people that had actually gotten quite a bit of notoriety because of their weight loss and eating a plant based diet, but it doesn't stick long term. And I think that, yeah, there's more to it than just going on the diet for sure. There's more to it.
yeah. So here's a question that I like to ask. If you could have coffee with your younger self pre weight loss surgery, when you were really just in the depths and in the throes of your food addiction, if you could like pull up a seat with that young man and have coffee with him, what would you tell him?
Well, number one, I'd say, fool, put down that caramel macchiato and just get a black cup of coffee. Now we can talk. I used to drink them big old, like the uber grande caramel macchiatos. But jokes aside, I would look the old me in the eye and I would just say, hey, man, you're going to be okay. I know today that you feel like you're going to die young. I know today that you're worried about having a heart attack. I know today that you don't feel like you amount to much in this world. I know today that you are thrilled to be working in radio and having a voice and a presence on the air, but you can still do that and be your authentic self and have an even greater impact than you could ever possibly imagine while putting your best foot forward and not settling and not having to feel ridiculed and judged by everybody. You're not always going to carry around this burden. You're not always
Mm,
going to be a slave to drive-throughs and figuring out where's the closest 24-hour drive-through. It's not always going to be like this. And even though you doubt yourself today, brother, you got more power inside of that body of yours than you could ever possibly imagine. So hang in there and you're going to be fine. And if I could have that conversation today, just so I could look at the face of the old me
mm,
and see what that reaction is, man, that would be an all timer. So somebody like a real life, Doc Brown from Back to the Future has to invent a time machine so I can have that conversation. That would be so cool. That would be
yeah,
so cool.
yeah. And then so imagine that you that you're talking to is like, okay, I feel that, but what do I do right now?
I would probably tell the story just as I just did to you. It's like,
Mm,
look, man, here are your options. I went down this road to get weight loss surgery, and certainly it brought me to this point, which is phenomenal.
yeah.
But I know that inside of you also is a person who has that incredible strength to push through. And I know that you're an addict of food. You've had that same midnight epiphany that I have, my friend. So why don't you try this first? And I would give them the information for True North
Yeah.
and that long-term fasting and the education of a healthy diet, what it means to eat healthy, and stress the importance of not having a cheat day, stress the importance of staying on the straight and narrow, and then just say, look, man, the cravings are going to come and they're going to be with you the rest of your life because I still get them.
Oh,
And so
yeah, I was
when
going to
those
ask you about that.
those cravings that come and they're just 10 to 15 minutes, because that's all it is. It's 10 to 15
Mhm.
minutes of hell, but you can get through it. And give yourself permission when you're having those cravings to be uncomfortable and be even a little bit angry and full of angst. Give yourself permission in that time to not fight it, but not give in. Accept for this time that it's going to suck. I call it accept the suck. Accept that right now your life sucks because all you want in the world is that pizza, is that Taco Bell, is that whatever. But you can get through it in 10 to 15 minutes. And man, I'm telling you, if you give yourself that permission to be uncomfortable, it takes the edge off just enough to make the craving tolerable. And it
Mhm.
gives you just enough power to get through it so that you don't relapse. And if you put all of those wheels in motion, like I said, you're going to be just fine.
Beautiful. Well, I can really relate to that. And I know that the dirties are going to be like, that sounds like Molly's embrace the suck saying.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I remember
you
you
know,
said that on the show. It's like,
we have
it's
the
like,
same
that
thing.
sounds so familiar. I love it. Yeah,
It is true. And it's very counterintuitive to allow yourself to feel like shit and without reaching for the thing that's going to make you feel better. I mean, that's so
absolutely.
counterintuitive because we want to feel better. We want to feel good. And if we reach for the thing, we'll feel momentarily good, but it is moment, it's just in that moment. Thank you for sharing that. You gave me goosebumps more than once. You before you went before you got your weight loss surgery, had you tried other diets apart from the infamous cookie diet you were on? Were you one of
Oh
those?
yeah.
Okay,
Oh yeah.
so
I was the king of the
okay.
diets. I mean, from a very young age. I mean, I recognized that I needed to go on a diet when I was in the 3rd grade. I stepped on the scale. Like
Mhm.
all of my classmates were getting weighed and we had our pictures taken. It was like a identikid program, I think is what it was called, and they would give us these little things. They looked like driver's license that had our name and our address and contact information on there just in case we ever got lost. And I remember stepping on the scale and being mortified that I was over 100 pounds in the 3rd grade and telling the person who was like recording the weight, like, I need to go on a diet. And so
Mhm.
over that time, like I went on every diet known to man, Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, some other, lesser known diets, cabbage soup, like you name it, I tried it. And even just tried the, exercise until you drop program. So that's how I knew that I could go to the gym and exercise 2.5 hours and still eat Taco Bell and say that it was the cookie diet because I had done this previously
Hmm.
on my own. And that was like, I was super unhealthy. Like the time that I did that before the cookie diet, like I would go and work out for an hour, get my cardio in, go outside, have a cigarette, and then go back in and lift weights. And I was doing that like 3, 4 times a week. And like, yeah, sure, I lost weight, but I was still going to Taco Bell. I was still eating garbage the rest of
Yeah.
the day, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. But yeah, long answer to a short question. At least a baker's dozen's worth of other
Mhm.
diets.
Okay. And so the way that you eat now, eating a plant-based diet, okay, so we call it a plant-based diet. So people might think, oh, that's just another diet. How is this different from a diet?
I don't even look at it as a diet, even though technically, that is the proper use of the word.
Right.
Diet is such a short-term thing, right? This
Yeah.
is more of well, this is just what I eat now. It's not even a lifestyle. It's just it's who I am. It's what I do. Um,
It's not hard for you because I think that
no.
some people, right, like they're thinking about doing this, whether they've had weight loss surgery and then going to incorporate a healthier lifestyle and diet into their life after, or, wherever they're at on their journey. I think for a lot of people, when they're thinking about this, it's like, oh, well, I'll give this diet a try. And and they might get scared because they've tried diets and they know that they suck and they don't work and they're hard to follow and everything else. So for people who might be interested in eating this way and living this way, what can you say to people to kind of put their mind at ease that this is different?
The number one concern that I get from people who think that they can't do it, it's well, beyond the protein thing. So that's just a caveat right there. I'm sure that we can talk about that ad nauseum. That should not be a concern for any reason. The thing that I hear a lot about isn't so much their concern that they can't do it. It's the concern of what other people will say when they
Mm-hmm.
do. And we don't. None of us. It's like human nature not to want to be judged. We have to fit into the pack. It's that pack mentality, and we dare not step out of line and be ostracized. Uh, and I've heard you swear a couple of times, so I hope you don't mind if I drop,
Bring it.
the major swear word. But what a person needs to like remind themselves is that they're doing it for themselves. And so anybody that's questioning or criticizing or ridiculing you, even if it's a member of your own family, and I know that that happens a lot, you have to remember you need to tell yourself when it comes to those other people that off is the direction that they can fuck. Forget them. You don't need that in your life. Like, you're doing this for you. And in turn, you are doing it for other people because when you're your best, you can help other people out to the best of your possible abilities. It's your decision, it's your life, it's your body. Fuel it to your maximum capabilities. It's not anybody else's decision. And that is what a true leader is. That is what, if you want to say it's not macho to eat a vegan diet, well, what is strength then?
Mm.
Right? Strength is having enough backbone or fortitude to buck the system and chart your own course, no matter what anybody else says. I don't care what anybody else says. I didn't care what people said when I was having weight loss surgery because I got questions about that. And
Mm.
then I got questions about vegan diets. Like, I just don't care. All I know is that the results have been fantastic for me. And the vast majority of people who I've talked to, the results have been fantastic for them too. And as you build more and more and more backbone because you stop listening to other people, and you're recognizing this, you're doing this for yourself, who should always be the most important person in your life. Don't be selfish about it, but do it for you. Do it for you. And when you're doing it for you, doesn't get any better than that. Just know that, like, you deserve it. You absolutely deserve it.
Preach. Yep. I could not agree more. You said it so well. The only thing I will add to that is nobody else has to live your life, right? You're the person that has to live your life. So you have to make decisions that you are going to be able to live with and to support your life. So I think everything you just said, yes, yes, yes. And I now have my new favorite expression: off is the direction that they can fuck. Love it. Thank you for that gem.
You're so
So,
welcome.
this has been so inspiring. So you um, are now at 140 pounds, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And you are feeling healthy and happy and loving your life and loving your work. So you've really come just, I mean, you're a whole different version of yourself now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to talk to you briefly about your work because you have a very interesting job and you get to talk to so many cool people. I mean, just the roster of guests that you all have had on the Exam Room podcast is incredible. And I want to just like, this has had to have been such a learning. I mean, this is like going to university almost, being able to ask questions to so many interesting people. Can you tell me a few of your favorite guests and a few of the like, I mean, this is a hard question because there's been so much, but a few things that you've really like taken away from doing what you do, and learning from so many awesome people.
I mean, I could name drop a lot, but if somebody asks you who's your favorite guest, well, what about the other 300 or 400 people who've been on the show? Where do they stand? I no, but I will play favorites here to a certain extent. Number one, my boy Will Bolsowitz, Mr. Fiber Fueled, the gut guru himself, the pharaoh of fiber, the master of the microbiome, king of the throne, ruler of epic dumps. Like, this is just my boy. Whenever he comes on the show, it is just like playtime. And like, we are two little kids in a sandbox whose maturity level is that of a second or even a first grader. And it's fantastic. And we get to talk about funny things like poop. And he's really smart, but he's able to explain it to everybody in a really simplified way. So nobody's being talked to over their head. Like, we're picking up what he's throwing down, and it's great. And we just have a grand time. And Dr. Neil Barnard, who has been, just an extraordinary colleague and a champion of the show. Like, I'm so in debt with him, and we've done so many episodes together that, we just have this rapport. And then, a friendship that has blossomed out of that, where, he and I can talk about Formula One racing, which is about the last thing you would expect to talk about with him, but absolutely loves that sport. And I'm still a big sports guy at heart. Dr. Alan Desmond from the UK, another one of my favorites, another great gastroenterologist. I find gastroenterologists, by and large, are some of the funniest people in the entire world. Why? Because they talk about poop all day. It's like
True,
it's
true.
impossible not to laugh. Um, so the others are some of my favorites. Lee Crosby, who was a former dietitian at the Physicians Committee, was fantastic. I mean, but I could go on and on. Jim Loomis, Karen Dugan, like all of these people are they're just so good. They're so good. Carly Bodrug from Plant U, Michael Greger. We did a live show together in Toronto that was like nothing like I was ever expecting. That was a night to behold. But yeah, Dan Butner. Anyway, I'm name dropping at this point. But yeah, if you're on the show, you're my favorite. How about we leave it if you leave it at that? And of course you.
Of course. Yeah, I was waiting to hear my name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how do I want to wrap up? I think, first of all, okay, so I want to know what a typical day of eating looks like for you. Like, do you eat breakfast? What do you have for lunch? What do you have for dinner? Like, what's a typical kind of snapshot for you in food?
Yeah, I eat about 4 meals a day and then a small snack, and these aren't big meals. So, but I still very much like to eat. And
Mm,
I don't like to be hungry. So, because I think that anybody that struggled with their weight knows that when those hunger pains come, bad decisions are made.
mm.
So I try to keep that at bay. That's one of my little tips. Breakfast is, you could either go like with the typical oatmeal and fruit. I do that a lot. But then, like recently, I've discovered cereal again, and I've been really enjoying cereal, and like really simple, like 1 or 2 ingredient cereals. I'm not talking about like, Kellogg's Frosted Flakes, where the ingredient list is as long as your arm. I'm talking about like literally, I found a cereal that is nothing but puffed quinoa or puffed corn. It's like corn pops, but without the sugar and junk in it. Like it's delicious. And so I will throw like frozen blueberries on that with some almond milk, and it's great. And I'll have like tangerines or a pineapple with that. Like it's phenomenal. So that gets my day off on the right foot. Lunchtime comes, a little greens and grains action there. Maybe I've got some roasted sweet potatoes, from the night before that I'll reheat, and that's good to go. Then dinner time, that big old salad. All right, so this is the big meal. That big old kitchen sink salad where I will have roasted, vegetables in the air fryer more often than not. And whatever I've got on hand that week, it's going on a bed of greens, and I'll throw some more grains in there. So if I had quinoa for lunch, I'm going to use like maybe brown rice or something else for dinner. Mix it all up. Always use a really tenderly roasted sweet potato in there. That way I don't have to use any dressing and add oil or fat. I'll throw some kimchi in there, blend it all up. Oh, it's so good. So many flavors. It's just a wonderful thing. Or as you call it, the big ass salad.
Hmm.
I'll have like dates and almonds or even a Lara bar as a snack. And then maybe another bowl of cereal is just a small meal, around 7 o'clock or something like that. So that's pretty much my day. And, it sounds like a lot of food, and it kind of is, but like I'm notorious for logging everything in my chronometer. And it's like,
Okay. Yeah.
some days like I'll like get to 2000 calories. Some days will be like maybe 2100, but most days it's like 18, maybe 1900 calories, and
Hmm.
maybe, like 40 grams of fat, which is pretty much what I got, in 1 or 2 burritos at Taco Bell back in the day. And
Hmm.
I'm always full. It's a beautiful thing.
Okay. And what about physical exercise? Do you do any form of that now?
So here's the thing. I discovered I'm not much of a gym rat. As much as I love sports, like I don't want to put on the work to be an elite athlete. So
No.
I got a case of the Effets and decided I'm never going to go to the gym. And I just walk a lot. I'm always up and moving. I've got a treadmill downstairs. But really, we got a dog. We live out here in the country, so we'll take him for a nice long walk. Always try to use the bathroom on a different floor here, always up and down doing laundry. Like, if I do go into the studio at the office, like then, we're on like the fourth floor and I'll, pop down to the first or the second floor to use the restroom there. It's just walk, 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 walk.
Mm.
The little things, stairs, not the escalator, and getting to 10,000 steps a day is not very complicated at all. It's not hard. And for me, that's sustainable. So that's kind of what I focus on.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I think that a lot of people will be happy to hear that because it just shows you don't have to be a gym rat to maintain a healthy weight. Like you
No,
don't have to. Thank goodness.
no.
I work out sometimes, but I've never liked it. I don't think I ever will like it. I'm not trying to like it. But I do want to, make sure that I, protect my bones and can, be strong enough to do the things I want to do. But yeah, so good to know. I like that, and building that into your routine, right? Just
Absolutely.
and I love walking as well. I think we're creatures that were designed to walk. So I think that's great. I want to
Absolutely.
talk to you briefly before we wrap up something that's a little bit, maybe it's a little controversial in the plant-based community, and that's the topic of nuts, because I heard you mention almonds and you eat almonds sometimes. So, and I know that for some people nuts can be a trigger because of their high fat content. So I want to talk a little bit briefly about that. Do you have an okay moderating your nut consumption?
If it's not a peanut, I'm okay.
Okay.
But you bring a jar of peanuts into this house, it can be quite difficult. That is one of the ones that I struggle with. So it's going to be pistachios, or it's going to be almonds here. But there are certainly some nuts, peanuts in particular,
Yeah.
that I just can't really moderate, and so won't I won't bring them into the house, and that's that. I kind of take the Taco Bell mentality with peanuts.
Yeah, yeah. And would that be for like, what about nut butters? So like peanut butter is a no-go, almond butter is okay, or do you not do nut butters?
Yeah, so peanut butter definitely falls into the no-go category. Almond butter would be okay. Sunflower butter is okay. Like anything but peanut butter.
Hmm.
In particular, crunchy peanut butter, which in my opinion, I know that this is a raging debate for peanut butter lovers. Smooth and creamy or crunchy. I was a crunchy guy. So can't be bringing that into the house. But for whatever reason, almond butter, sunflower butters, never had a problem with them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's similar. I mean, I've talked with a lot of people who actually it's the same thing. They're like, I can have a little almond butter, but I can't have a little bit of peanut butter. So it's
Yeah,
so with things like that, you're just like abstinence is key, and that's just what's going to happen. But
yeah,
other kind of nuts, sunflower seeds, almond stuff like that, they tend to be okay for you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I don't want to leave on that topic though. I want to wrap it up with something better than almonds and peanuts.
All right.
Okay. So, right now, listeners out there, and we kind of covered this a little bit, but let's say listeners out there and they're like, wow, this really resonated with me. I'm so glad that I heard this conversation. You had mentioned a couple of resources, and that would be like the actually centers where people can go detox. But what if somebody just like, okay, I'm not ready to do that, but I want to do something because this really resonated. What is just like one thing someone can do today if it's not signing up for a program somewhere?
You know what I would do? I would do the same thing that somebody did for me, that Austin Aries did for me, the pro wrestler. I'd be like, take a couple of minutes, take 90 minutes out of your day, hop on Netflix, watch What the Health.
Hmm.
And if that whets your appetite, then watch The Game Changers. And, if you want to really go down the rabbit hole, then you can watch Food Inc. after that. But I would just start there, because when you're talking
Yeah.
about, learning, they did a masterful job of presenting data and facts in a fun and enlightening and inspiring kind of way. So I would start there. Don't make it any more complicated. I'm not going to say go subscribe to the Exam Room Podcast by the Physicians Committee, which is available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever it is that you get your shows. I'm not going to tell people to do that unless they want to, and when they do, please leave a 5-star rating and a nice review. Not going to do that. I will say start with the documentaries, and
Yeah.
just see what happens. Like if that's your jam, I think anybody can invest 90 minutes in their health, and that's all that is. And you'll learn a lot
Mhm.
in a short amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that these resources are available because they're so accessible. And who doesn't want to sit down and watch Netflix for 90 minutes? I mean, I do. It's great.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I
You
think
know,
it's a
and
good first step.
it's not going to scare people off. Like we're not talking about having, a chickpea burger. We're just talking about facts and science and like watching the proof in the pudding, and then you can get into the recipes that may like make people at first be like, a what burger, a chickpea burger? Like, yeah, man, just a burger. So watch the documentaries. Don't scare yourself. Just learn.
Love it. All right, Chuck. Where can people go to learn more about you if they want to hear more about what you have to say, follow your goodness? Where can they go?
Follow my goodness. Well, my goodness, they can follow me on Instagram, Spotify. Well, yeah, Spotify too. Instagram, Facebook, X, all of that good stuff at Chuck Carroll WLC. Um, and so yeah, that's my personal stuff. But really, the best place to get to know me is through the show, the exam room. So, um, if you're interested, I mean, we'd love to have you as a roomie. Apparently there's already quite a few roomies and dirties, commingling. So let's crowd up the room. There's plenty of space for everyone.
Awesome. Well, so I was a little intimidated to talk with you because you've been doing, I mean, you've been a radio personality and you're a podcast host, and I'm not as experienced as you are. So how did I do? And is there anything that you wish that I would have asked you that I didn't?
Oh, this is part of the show.
Yes.
Lord, most people ask for critiques and air checks
No,
afterwards.
give it to me.
Nice. All right. So number one, don't fiddle with your hair during the show. I know that that's you. But like try to save that. Like you're very much you without fiddling with your hair. Like your whole present, just let your presentation speak for who you are. And you are presented very much as Molly. And I love it. It comes across clear. Like, so I wouldn't do that. Um, but other than that, you did a really good job. What impressed me, and I remember thinking this during the conversation, was that you were really listening to what it was I was saying, like, and you called back to the almonds, like you followed up. You had a nice follow up question, which I can't imagine was on a piece of paper ahead of time. Like, yeah, I'm going to ask that boy about almonds. Like, no, like you were listening to what the guest had to say, so that's pretty cool. And then you did a good job of walking people through the story, or help guiding me through the story and keeping me on task. So I think that that's pretty good stuff right there. Yeah,
Awesome.
you're doing good. You're doing real good, Molly.
Well, thanks. And for anybody else who is, going to the podcast world, take your cues. Don't mess with your hair, damn it.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah, yeah. If you want to reach the pinnacle, the top of the podcast game, don't touch your freaking hair.
Okay. Got
Yeah,
it.
but you're
And
right there. You're on the cusp. You're gonna be there. You're gonna be there.
I had thought about doing a podcast for a very long time, and the Dirties had been asking for it. And I'm like, I don't know how to do, like, I don't know. And then I just was like, okay, we'll just do it. And they ended up really, really enjoying it. So, and I get to talk to cool people, which is great because usually I'm a big introvert. And so doing stuff like this is just enough for me because then I can, like, not talk to anybody else for the rest of the day. So
I got you. But you don't strike me as an introvert. People are shocked to know, but I believe you because I'm actually one too.
You
People are
are
shocked
really
to know. Oh, yeah. People are shocked to know that. It's like I will go out and I will do these events and I will do the show and I will talk to a lot of people. But what you don't see is like immediately after the event is over, like I'm retreating. Like I'm going to the event by myself. I'm usually not rolling up with colleagues. And then I'm like going home, where it's just my wife and I, our dog, and my father-in-law, right? And it's just like our little country sanctuary. And that's kind of the way that I am. Like I get all of my communication done in mega doses, and then I just kind of retreat to reset.
yeah.
And I can talk to a room of like 10,000 people with much less problem than I can talk to somebody one-on-one when it's face to face. And if I'm at a party, like if I go to a party being thrown by a friend of my wife, like I won't talk to anybody unless they talk to me. Um, I don't know. I guess I'm
Same.
just shy like that.
Yeah, same. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Um, one reason why I asked for the feedback and if there's, anything that I can improve or whatever, I asked that on air for a reason. And one reason is because with Clean Food Dirty Girl, one of my big things is just celebrating imperfection and realizing that, like, nobody is perfect. We're all these messy, flawed humans. And so I'd like to remind people that we all are. And so that's just another little way I can do that. So I thank you for going with that and for reminding us all that we are human. And I certainly enjoyed hearing your humanness and your human story today, Chuck. Thank you so much for being on the show with me.
This is be fun. This is be fun. See,
This
there's
is
my
be
critique.
fun.
This is be
Yay!
fun. This has been fun. We should have another confessional sometime soon.
Absolutely, I agree. Let's do it.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.